never smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some ditsies. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to rhyme. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys. Miss Liz in the house. That's right. This day has just been one of those days. This morning we lost the sound, and then this afternoon we had trouble with the sound again, and now tonight we're just a little behind schedule. But you know what? I have the incredible Luke Mickelson in the house, and we're going to talk about sleep. What are we doing? Elizabeth. We're going to be talking about the sleep in heavenly peace. That is what we are talking about tonight. But tonight's tea that Luke is serving with me is Find Your Passion. So we're going to talk about that as well with tonight's tea time. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Get over to Spotify, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of those good platforms. Give that a like, follow, and subscribe. And get these tea times out there because they do make a difference for everybody out there. We're going to do a little disclaimer, and then I'm going to do an intro, and then we're going to get Luke in here, and we're going to spill some tea together, and we're going to talk about the incredible nonprofit that he has, and we're going to open up some doors for some beds, maybe for some children tonight. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicated to sharing real-life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guest viewers and participants are responsible for using their own judgment when considering any action or decisions that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, Miss Liz, at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com, or check out my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you're ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Now let me give you a little bit on Luke. Well, good evening, and welcome back to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where purpose meets action and impact begins with one decision. Today, I'm honored to welcome Luke Mickelson, founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, a global movement built on one simple but life-changing mission. No kid sleeps on the floor in our town. Luke grew up a farm kid in Kimberly, Idaho, where hard work and community were buzzwords. They were a way of life. After building a successful business career, he realized something was missing. In 2012, he created a simple ideal: build a bed for a child in need. That single act of service became a worldwide movement. Today, Sleep in Heavenly Peace has over 400 chapters across 47 states and 4 countries, delivering more than 350,000 beds to children who otherwise would have slept on the floor. Luke's work has been recognized nationally, from features on NBC, Nightly News, and Good Morning America, to being named a top 10 finalist on CNN Heroes. But beyond the recognition, what stands out mostly is his philosophy: humans helping humans. Luke, welcome to Tea Time. We're honored to sit with someone who reminds us that tiny moments can create massive impact. Let me get Luke in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Luke.
Miss Liz, how are you?
I am good. I just feel like I ramble all at the beginning of every Tea Time, but we got to get all that good stuff out there, right?
You do better than me. My wife complains I need to read more books because it helps me read things when I read out loud. Because if I read in front of a microphone or I'm trying to do a speech and read it, I fall apart. I'm terrible.
It has actually helped my vocabulary reading all these bios and all of this intros and stuff like that. You'd be surprised reading out loud what it does to you.
Sure. Yeah, I bet.
So Luke, I'm going to take you. Go ahead. I'm going to take you down to first rabbit hole of Miss Liz. Who was Luke as a little guy and who's Luke now?
Wow. That's a big question.
I like to go through the big holes first.
Let's do it. Well, yeah. Thank you for the intro. Thank you for the bio. By the way, I will say I've been on a lot of podcasts. You have one of the coolest intros I've ever seen. You got your own music. That's cool.
That is my son that wrote that song.
Oh, you're kidding. I thought that was AI. Wow, that is awesome. He did well. Yeah, I'm like you said, I'm a farm kid from Idaho. I grew up in a little town, 4,000 people, and I tell people the beautiful thing about living in a small town is the same reason why it's not fun is because you know everybody and they know you.
I know that I'm a small northern girl.
Yeah,
everybody knows your business.
Everybody, and theirs, whether you like to or not, and it's kind of funny what that does. When you look back as an adult now, it's not fun necessarily at the time, but you do get to look back and you're like, you know what? I can see why I have a sense of community and working with people. And I just feel this urge to support where I see need. And because when you're in a small community, that's what you did. Your neighbor needed help, you go mow the lawn. If someone's pulled off the side of the road, you stopped and, hey, Joe, what's going on? You need some. You just know everybody, right? And if you don't, by gosh, you heard about it. Hey, Luke, why didn't you stop by and help Susie over? It's just so
you don't want to know what Susie's been doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, they probably already know. But no, I look back at that and I really appreciate my upbringing when it comes to that because I really think it formed characteristics in me and in my character that you don't know at the time, but you can look back now and go, especially when you've talked with other people that are from bigger towns or their perspectives are so different from yours because you only know yours and you think everybody thinks the same way, which they don't, and so yeah, little kid, I grew up in this small town I'm grateful for, and that little kid just turned into a little bit bigger kid, and being from a small town, I tell people, listen, if you knew how to pick up any sort of ball and throw it in the right direction with any level of accuracy, you're going to you're not going to maybe play sports. You're going to play sports. You have no choice.
You're going to get that field of dreams.
Yeah, exactly. It was fun. I played every sport. I tell people, there was only 2 weeks of the entire year for all of my high school career, at least, where I wasn't in a game or didn't have a practice, right? And that probably kept me out of a lot of trouble, Liz. You know what I'm saying? But it really developed, again, a sense of teamwork and getting along. And even to this day, I like hunting and fishing, but I don't like doing it by myself. It just doesn't seem as fulfilling as when I have someone with me. And I get that. I think from the small community I grew up, the desire I had working with my teammates and taking on challenges and overcome them together. That was more fun to me than doing it by myself,
So is that where you found your passion?
That's a great question. I think that's where parts of my passion was rooted. I had a lot of passions. I had a lot of hobbies. I think we all do, right? We have things that we love to do, and we're what I thought was passion, and it probably is passionate. I loved fishing. I loved catching the big sturgeon, and then I loved taking people and watch them. In fact, this is I don't think I've ever shared this, Liz. I had a YouTube channel called Sturginity.
Oh, well, look at that.
Yeah, and what it was I had this big dream. I'd take people that never caught a sturgeon before, and I'd record them, right, and then give it to them and share it on. And it was really fun. It's fun to watch. If you don't know what a sturgeon is, they're a prehistoric beasts, right? And these are white sturgeon in Idaho, so they can be as long as 12 feet and be 1,000 pounds. So when you reel up a 8-foot sturgeon that is 75 years old and weighs 280 pounds, it's a moment you don't forget. And so I liked doing that, and I'm not sure where I was going with that, but I loved working with people, and I can see their passion and my passion, bits and pieces that were in that. And so I think working with people and giving them a fun experience and service and helping, those are all built into my DNA as a passion key or passion trigger. Sure.
Well, you also gave me a bunch of things to work with tonight. And you said finding and following your passion as a child. So as a child, you had it in you for service.
I think number one, I grew up in my parents divorced when I was right before I started high school. Right. And so, and my dad wasn't too much in the picture really my whole life. So it was really just my mom and the 5 kids, my 4 siblings. And my mom was my number one fan, right? And when my parents divorced, I watched my mom work 3 jobs, and I appreciate the hard work she went through. I think it was an example to me. There was many times, she never missed a ball game of mine. I mean, we'd come home from being away, get home at 11:30 at night, and we had to go clean the potato offices. That's just what we did. And so here I just got done with a basketball game. I'd go and clean potato offices till 12 o'clock at night. And there's a few occasions, Miss Liz, and this will give you a little insight about my mom, that I didn't have a very good game. I didn't shoot well or something like that. And she worked for the school as a secretary for the superintendent. So she had keys. She'd get me into the gym and we'd go shoot for a half hour. I mean, 1 o'clock in the morning. That's what kind of my mom was. And that was a really big example to me. And then I think, wanting to give back, the sense of community is always really strong, has always been strong in me. And I think it stems back, when my parents divorced, we knew we weren't going to have a lot for Christmas, right? We knew we didn't have a lot anyways, but there was many times I saw the community help. For example, I went out one time during Christmas to grab the mail, and we had very, small and moderate Christmases, if you will. Well, there was $1,500 in an envelope, unmarked, that we knew came from the community. And I think those, when you build those up time after time, I always wanted to be that guy that did that for someone, because when someone could, they did. And when I can, I will. And that's, I always kind of had that mentality, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, you gave me the word bedlessness, not a real word, but a real problem. Let's get into this bedlessness. Did you struggle with a bed when you were growing up?
No, that's one thing I always had. And the sad but real truth about child bedlessness, it's not even a real word. Even the word itself doesn't know it's real, right? But it is. It's a real problem. And kind of where all this started is in 2012. I was I moved back to my own hometown. I'd been there for a while, and I had a good job, Liz. I was getting paid well. I was going to buy the company. I had my career set. I had a couple of kids. I was coaching football, just exactly what I knew I was going to be doing. And in church, I was what was called a young men's president. I was helping the kids, working with the youth. It was awesome. But there was something inside of me, and it had been there for a few years, just an ache, just an absence is what I kind of talk about. And later on, I realized, I think we all get to a point, especially as we mature and go through life a little bit, we all get to a point where we reevaluate really what is important to us, and I quickly, it seemed like it was overnight, but I'm sure it took a little bit of time, but it seemed like overnight, I just realized, you know what? The number of zeros behind my paycheck don't mean squat. The number of 4-wheelers or motorcycles, whatever toys that are out there, they don't mean anything. And they certainly don't identify you as successful. To some people, yes. And to me, I was realizing that doesn't mean anything. At least it didn't mean anything to me. anymore.
Yeah.
And, and I was going through a major faith crisis. I didn't know, I'd been a part of a religion for my whole life. And now I didn't know what to believe anymore. And these are all just really deep and dark and hard and frustrating feelings, especially when you're in charge of the youth group. You're supposed to be a spiritual guide to them. I was fun. I got that covered, but I was just fighting internally, all this going on. Well, as part of this position I held in the church, and it was like I was responsible for the spiritual activities as well as the physical activities for these boys ages 12 to 17. And basically the activity arm of the church was Boy Scouts. So I was like the leader of the Boy Scouts. And living in Idaho, that's pretty obvious. It's a lot of outdoor activity, right? But it's really hard still to this day. And every leader out there listening to this podcast knows to try to get an activity for a kid that's fun, that doesn't involve a screen or a controller or a phone or something. It's not easy to do nowadays, right? These kids have so much activity and whatnot in front of them. Anyways, in this position, I sat in meetings about every other week with other leaders in the church, and we talk about things that are going on in the community, things that were going on with our individual respective responsibilities in the church. And of course, we talked about people that we're helping in the congregation and in the community. Well, one family came up and it kind of perked my ears because, again, I live in a small town. And since I was a kid, I've been riding my bike around the whole town. I thought I knew every inch of that town. And lo and behold, I didn't, because this family lived in an apartment complex I didn't even know existed. And
Wow.
And so that kind of like raised my ear going, wait, where's this place? And then the leader talked about how she, she paid a visit to the home and kind of evaluated some of the things they need. And so she's telling us this, right? She's telling us, look, they need, kids could use some clothes, right? And the kids don't have any beds and they need help rides to school. And I was like, wait a minute. Whoa. Did you just say the kids don't have any beds? For me, I don't know why. It really hit me. And she says, yeah. And I'm like, well, of course, they have mattresses, right? She says, no, they just have blankets on the floor. And, Miss Liz, that hit me so hard. I just was like, I thought of my own kids. I thought of what that would be like. I never slept on the floor, or at least I did on purpose, but never day in and day out. It was never a choice I had to make as a kid, nor did I ever hear of any kid that was in that situation. And so two things happened. I remember thinking about my kids, what that would have been like for them or would be like for them. And then I instantly thought about my Boy Scouts. And I said, here's an opportunity that I can take an Xbox controller out of their hands, put a drill in it, sander, and we'll teach them how to build something. I mean, I love working with wood. I'm not afraid of tools. And although I never built furniture in my life, I can figure it out. I'm a farm kid. That's kind of what you do. And so I got really excited to do this. And of course, I went home immediately after that meeting and grabbed a tape measure and a piece of paper and a pencil and went down there. And my daughter had a bunk bed. So I'm measuring it, figuring out to do this. I got to go get this, got to do this. This is work. I'm really excited. And if you know anything about me, I'm a hyper-focused. Once I'm on a project, I can't do anything until it's done. So,
you're like me. If it doesn't get done, I'm frustrated with myself.
Oh, I'm miserable.
Yeah.
Right? And so I went and got all the stuff, and then the boys came over for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It took a couple of 3 nights for us to finish this bunk bed, but it was so fun, to watch these kids and they realizing that, playing with power tools and wood, this is pretty fun. And of course they knew it was going to help a family that had kids on the floor. So that, they really felt it, I was really grateful for. That was what I wanted. But when the time came on Saturday to deliver this bunk bed, the word kind of got out, and all of a sudden I had like 20, 30 people show up at my house, the kids' parents, their brothers, their friends, all this. And I'm like, guys, we can't send an army over to this 2-bedroom, apartment. So me and a bunch of people stayed back, and I had to clean my garage anyways. Right. But the boys and their parents and the other leaders went and delivered this bed. Well, the next day at church, I just heard how awesome it was, right? That they loved it. And I was super excited for the kids, but if I was honest with myself, I was pretty jealous too. I didn't get to, of course, see the results or the fruits of our labors. And so So I remember the next week, that week, it's funny how life just kind of creeps back in, right? I was on this high, this hole that was in my soul just filled instantly when I was doing this project, and now I can just feel it drain, right? And I didn't want that. I knew I've been struggling with this for years, and I wanted that back. And meanwhile, I'm on the couch with my kids, and we're watching Big Bang Theory. That was kind of our program watching, and some commercial came on, and I don't even remember the commercial, Liz. It was an Xbox game, or maybe it was a new Xbox. I don't know. And every parent knows what I'm talking about when it's just starting Christmas and you start seeing these commercials and you see the light in your kids' eyes, that's what they want. And I'm just sitting here on the couch, just internally struggling, trying to give myself pep talks. And, because what we just did was awesome, but it almost made it worse because I was filled and now it wasn't filled. So, and then now my kids are going to talk about this Xbox game they want, and they've already got them. And I just delivered beds to kids that don't have them, and you got bed. I mean, you can see this, this turmoil that's going in my head. And I remember the next thing I know, I stood up, didn't say a word, just walked to the garage. And my kid's like, Dad, where are you going? The program's on. And I stopped and I turned around and I said, you know what? I've got some leftover wood from our bed we did last week. We're going to build another bed and you're going to come and help me, And so I've got pictures. It was awesome. I got pictures of my little 6-year-old and her pink tutu drilling away, and my son in his favorite Boise State jersey pounding wood. We had a ball building this bed, and I was actually excited because I wanted to do it again. I just, I like building stuff. The funny reality was I had no idea what to do with it. I didn't know child bedlessness. I solved the problem. The world was solved, right? Or so I thought. And so now I'm sitting here with this finished bunk bed that my kids made, and I wanted it to go to a family in need. I just didn't know any. And so my wife at the time says, well, why don't you put it on one of those buy, sell, trade Facebook groups, right? I'm like, okay, whatever that is. I wasn't a Facebook guy. So I joined one, and then I put on here, hey, as a Christmas project, me and my kids built this bed. I'd like, if anybody knows of a child, I want it to go to a child that's in need, let me know. This is what this is for. Well, two things happened. As I posted that, well, all of a sudden, all these comments started coming in from people, Liz, I didn't even know who they were. Like, how do you even know? I don't know how the algorithm works, but sure, some Joe over here, or I didn't know. And there was friends that I hadn't seen or talked to in 20 years were responding. That was shocking. And the second thing was shocking was how many of them knew of kids sleeping on the floor and the terrible conditions that they were sleeping in. I mean, pallets, on hardwood cement floors in the basement, on couches. We had one kid, a kid would be sleeping with 2 or 3 brothers or sisters at the same time in the same bed, all of these situations. And man, it really kind of upset me to the point where this is going on under my nose, like in a small community. What? This isn't right. I've never heard of this. And so I got pretty excited that I had this bunk bed. And then I get a phone call that night from a friend of mine. She works in the social services area, and she was helping transition homelessness people, finding a house, getting them on their feet. And she said, hey, Luke, I saw your post. Have you delivered that bed yet? I said, no. She's like, great. I have the family. I said, do tell. And so this is my Haley story. Can I share this with you?
Absolutely.
Oh, I have to compose myself a little bit. But Haley was a 6-year-old girl who had never slept on a bed before. She'd only slept in the backseat of her mom's car. They were homeless. And so my friend helped him get a house, and I got really excited because this is exactly what I was looking for, right? Is something meaningful, impactful, and something my kids could be proud that they said. And so me and my buddy, we loaded up the truck with the bed and the mattress and everything and went out to this house. Well, I participated probably like a lot of people in people that have struggled in transitioning homelessness and seen poverty before. But when I walked into that house, it was probably the first time, not probably, it was the first time that I was looking at it through the eyes of a 6-year-old, you know? And when you do that, you go in there and you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, there was nothing in the house. There was no couch to watch cartoons, nor a TV, you know, there was no cereal boxes or tables to eat anything at, nothing. The only thing in the house was a milk crate that had a hot plate on it with a can of soup. That was it.
Wow.
You know, and I mean, I'm just horrified for this little girl. Of course, you look at her and she's as happy as a lark, right? She's got a house. I mean, she was just chipper. And I remember I leaned down to her and I said, Haley, show me where you sleep. And she's like, yeah, this is my new bedroom. So we go back, and my gosh, you can imagine what this looked like, right? There's holes in the carpet and tears on the wallpaper. The closet door was gone. There's used dolls and Barbie dolls and stuff in the closet. And all of that was shocking. But the most shocking thing, the one thing I just couldn't shake, was I looked in the corner and there's a pile of clothes there, and that's where Haley slept. She would come home from school. She'd put her PJs on, sleep on her school clothes as pillows and blankets. Think about that. And then next morning, put on those same pillows and blankets, because they were shirts and pants, and go to school. And
There's so much that we take advantage of, right?
Oh, you don't, it's like breathing air. We don't think about how important that is until you don't have it, you know? And to me, I was almost upset, like pissed off, pardon the phrase, but this is going on in my town, and this little girl spent a lot of time on the floor, you know, and she's happy about it. What is that about, you know? Well, I got really excited because I had a bed for her, right? And so we brought in this bed and we started putting it together. She didn't know why we were there, but I was watching her, right? I was watching her, and quickly the minute she realized this is a bed, Liz, I've never seen a child react this way. Certainly not over a bed. It was like the greatest Christmas present she ever saw. I mean, she ran to me, to my buddy, these two big, strange guys in her room, gave us a hug. She'd run up, she hugged the bed, and then she kissed the bed. I mean, that's how much it meant to her. And to me, it broke me, you know. And I remember sitting down on this bed with her and looking up, and here's mom, you know, 6 years of tears just pouring down this poor lady's face, a single mom. And I was raised by a single mom, so I knew what every single one of those tears meant. You know, I'd seen my mom shed them. I knew the frustrations of what a single parent goes through, the worry, the guilt sometimes of all these things, these emotions that they were just pouring out of her, right? And I remember thinking, you know what, this is way more than just a bed. You know, it was a different feeling when you delivered it. When I delivered it, when I saw it for myself. And I tell people all that time, I can talk about it. I can show you videos and pictures all day long, and you'll get a little bit of a feel. But there's nothing like sitting in the room, right, and seeing little Joe over here, in this case, little Haley, just erupt. Because she has a bed that she's never had before.
What brings some dignity, right?
Oh, well, so there's a couple of things that when you stop, I tell people, when you stop and think about it, just slow down for a second and think, what would it be like as a child not to have a bed? Let's talk about it physically, right? We all know you don't get a good night's sleep, like these kids don't. They wake up sore, they wake up tired. And when you and I are sore and tired and wake up on the quote, wrong side of the bed, there's a phrase for that for a reason, right? You're grouchy and cranky, and you know, you've got a bad mood. And so you go to school, these kids go to school. So what do they get labeled as? You know, they're in bad moods. They have terrible grades because they're not learning. They're not ready to learn like all the other kids, right? You go to a teacher, they're pretty accurate at pointing out which kid possibly doesn't have a bed. And they're, for the most part, right, you know. And that's just the physical side. Now you think about the emotional and the mental side of things, right? These kids, they can't have sleepovers. They don't have a bed. Right? They're embarrassed for their kids, other friends to come in their room. And then they go over to their friend's house, and their friends not only have a bed, they got throw pillows, for crying out loud. You know, I can't imagine what that does to a kid mentally. Right. And if that doesn't sink in, right, think about when you and I have a bad day, you know, trouble at work or bad relationship, you get in an argument with your spouse or whatnot, you just have a really bad day, or you feel sick, where do we long? Where does everybody long to be? Tucked away in your bed.
Yep.
I speak all over the country, and to this day, I have not found a bed I would rather sleep in than in my own.
Right? It doesn't matter how hard or soft that bed is. It's our bed.
That's right. That's right. And that tells you something. So it's not just a physical part of the bed that means something. Years after I'd started this in 2012, a couple of years after that, a friend of mine come up to me and he says, Luke, I don't think I've ever told you this. He said, it's interesting that you call it SHP, for sleeping on the peace. You call it SHP. He said, because me and my sister grew up in a really abusive home, parents fighting all the time, and it was rough. And when it got really bad, my sister and I would say it's time to go to our secret hiding place. And they called it their SHP, and it was their bed.
Wow.
So yeah, it isn't necessarily about how soft and how comfortable it is, although that's important. It's more about solitude. It's more about recharge and escape. You and I get to do that. Yeah. Little Haley didn't. And these kids that we serve didn't. And I remember going home that night after delivering that bed. We had about a 30-minute drive home, and a couple of things I thought about. The first thing I thought, we didn't say anything to each other, by the way. I mean, it was just, you were so overwhelmed with emotion, you couldn't say anything. And I remember thinking, I spent a couple of hours a night with my kids building a bed, and it solved that problem. Okay, that's well worth my time, And then just like that, Liz, my hunting, fishing, sports, college football on Saturdays, hanging out with friends, all of that didn't matter to me anymore. It certainly wasn't as important as it used to be, right? And instantly, all of that just filled my heart to overflowing. I found something that I am passionate about, beyond passion. I mean, it was something I'd never felt before. It was all the emotions at the same time. You're anger, you're sad, you're happy, you're thrilled, you're pissed off. You're all of these things, right? And I remember finally getting home, and I looked over to my buddy and I said, you know what, Jordan? No kid is going to sleep on the floor in my town if I have anything to do with it.
I like that phrase.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was actually just a motto, and we loved it so much. Now it's our mission statement. And the cool thing about the mission statement is we've had a lot of people say we probably should change it. And I said, heck no, because this mission statement's not meant for the organization to tell the public what we're doing. It's meant for the public to tell people what they're going to do about this problem, because it needs to be solved locally. This, child bedlessness, once we started delivering beds and telling and showing and talking about the things that we're doing, this is when we started uncovering this horrible pandemic that no one knows even exists. Child bedlessness. Like I said, not even a real word, but it is a major problem. And I remember, we built 21 beds that Christmas season and delivered them all before Santa showed up, right? And it was the greatest Christmas ever. I mean, it was sad to learn that most cases, this was the only Christmas present these kids were going to get, but it was the best one that they've ever had, because they'd never had a bed before, most of them, And so it was pretty meaningful. And the more we built and the more we shared, the more people came out of the woodworks and said, hey, well, I know a kid and I want to help. That was the other thing I didn't realize, is there were so many people in my community that they were like me. They wanted to help. They wanted to do something, want to give back. They're trying to find meaning. They're trying to find something that fulfills. They want to leave a footprint in this life of their efforts to help people. They just don't know how. They don't know where. They don't know what to do. I was the same way. I mean, I do this, that, and the other. It just wasn't as fulfilling in my heart as providing a bed for a child. And when I learned that no one else was doing this, like I became CASA, CPS, foster care, these agencies. I was like their best friend. I was like their favorite person because finding a bed for a child, of all the things of transitioning homelessness, fridges and TVs and even cars and stuff like that, a bed for a child, oftentimes they told me, was the single hardest thing for them to find. And the reason why is because no one knows that that's a problem, and there's no agencies that were providing it. So
Well, nobody ever mentions a bed, right? They go to the fridge, the stove, the washer, the dryer, the TV. They don't
correct.
think of beds.
Yeah, they don't think that's us an essential part because it's probably they've got something. I'm sure they got something, right? And I was the same way. I mean, I was just as shocked to learn about that first child, those first kids sleeping on the floor, and then now I'm getting emails and messages on Facebook and all this about kids. Example, I learned of a family, an 8-person family that were living in an 8-person van. I mean, that's what they lived. And they finally got a house. Well, we had to take them, not had to, we were blessed to take them 3 bunk beds, 6 beds for their kids, right? And they never had a bed before.
Wow.
And those are the things that are just, it's so shocking and it's so sad because no one knows about it.
And the thing that you said, Luke, was it's people's, not the organizations, right? It's a people problem. People are not talking. People are not sharing. People are not opening. Like you lived in that community, a small community where everybody knows everybody, but you don't know about the bedless children.
Correct. Well, and the problem with that is it's so, you can't fix a problem if you don't know about it. Right. And that's the problem today, even, as you and I sit right here, Liz, and as we talk, there are 155,000 kids just on our waiting list right now. And the sad, even the more sadder truth to that is we only cover 27% of the United States geographically. So that 155,000 only represents less than 30%. Can you imagine if the entire country knew that A, child bedlessness was a problem, and B, there is a solution called Sleep in Heavenly Peace? We would have applications. I mean, there's the statistics right now that we've come up with is it's greater than 3% of the total population. So if you're in a town of 100,000 people, there are 3,000 kids sleeping on the floor.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you start hearing those numbers, that's when it really hits.
Oh, it not only hits then, it's one thing to have need. Yeah. It's another thing when you have need and no solution. And that's the problem. When I decided to be a nonprofit back in 2014, we went from, a family Christmas project to let's make this a nonprofit. I was like, okay, well, let's find out who else is doing this. So I researched online. Certainly someone can help me get this started. I found one charity in the entire country after weeks of searching that was providing beds for kids. And they were just buying them from like Target, right? They weren't building them. And so I was shocked. And that it made more sense why now the CPS friends and CASA friends that I made, they were so excited that they had this resource to use now because there wasn't one. And there hasn't been anywhere other than Charlotte, North Carolina. There was Beds for Kids, which was an awesome name, by the way. I like that name.
So Luke, you work only with the teenagers or do you work with adults, volunteers as well?
Only the requirements we have for a child to get a bed is ages 3 to 17, and they have to have obviously a home to put the bed in because we provide the whole thing: bed, mattress, sheets, pillows. The kid can sleep in the bed before we leave. And I chose children for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it is one of those things that's really hard for agencies to supply. For whatever reason, getting beds for parents, I guess, is easier. I don't know why. But probably the biggest reason why, Liz, is because these kids, they're in these situations not because of anything that they did or any of their choices. These are the choices of other people. And sometimes it's not even the parents' fault. A lot of house fires, someone loses their job. There's many times we have a mom that grabbed a garbage bag, as much stuff as she can stuff in it, grabbed the kids, jumped in the car and took off. It's sad to say, but that happens a lot, and a bed for even her, let alone the kids, impossible, and that's the sad thing is food, clothing, shelter, the 3 big ones, right? There's lots of agencies that help and supply that. We're very blessed to live in a country that has that. A bed is just a luxury, and it shouldn't be like that.
That shouldn't be a luxury. It should be a necessity.
Correct. And the sad truth is, and I'm working on this, guys, you have my promise This is going to change. It's such an asset. We don't, our state and government and federal legislation, they don't even know that this is a problem. So if you want to go try to find grant money to help solve this solution, yeah, there ain't no such thing as money to help provide beds for kids, because they don't even know it's even a problem, right? And so we're working to change that.
Well, that's good. And that's why we have guests like you on Tea Time, so we can open those doors and that. I love that you have the new generation of tradespeople, getting kids back in with the drills and the hammers, getting them off of electronics. We need more of that. The trades is really just disappearing and we need to bring it back. So how long does it take to make a bunk bed now?
Oh, that's a great question. The process for building these beds has evolved quite a bit, by the way. What's funny, they're the exact same design. Nothing has changed on it. Well, that's not totally true. The second year we built it, a buddy of mine who was a big builder, we sat down and tried to identify, okay, we need to cut down on wood waste. What's the most economical way to do this? We realized instead of buying 8 foot, if we bought 10 foot, then we could make them this, blah, blah, blah. We just have to drop the bed an inch and a half each bed. So a bunk bed, 3 inches, which didn't make any difference, right? Other than just, you couldn't even tell. But from that day, from 2013 to today, it's the same design, and it's very simple because we wanted to make the process, number one, it was for the Boy Scouts. I had to make a process very simple, but I also knew that the more simple, pure, straightforward, transparent I can make this bed building process and organization, the better it would be, right? Because I don't know about you. I mean, I love charities, but I hated donating money to charities where I didn't know the money went to. I didn't know where my efforts went to, yada, yada. If I was going to run a charity, it was going to be the way I want a charity to be ran. I want to know exactly where my dollar goes, and I want that dollar to go to the purpose and to the people and to the problem that I originally, I want to help the kids in my town. That's what I wanted to do. And
Yeah,
so
a lot of charities, what they end up doing, Luke, is they start losing focus, right? They start losing the purpose, and then they start taking the money for the board of directors and stuff like that, like all the members, right? And then we start to lose the focus and the purpose behind it, and the passion is finally just gone, right? It's just another organization. And what I learned about your organization is that you're pushing, you're going for change, and that's what we need is change. We need awareness because people are not even aware that children don't have beds. And why are parents getting a bed before a child is getting a bed?
Yeah. What's odd is, many situations, the parents have a bed while the child sleeps with the parent, right? And that's okay for a while, but there's a lot of psychological bonds that are unhealthy that get created there. The parents, the kid or the parents, they don't get a good night's sleep because, they've got their kids in their beds with them. It's just not a healthy environment for anybody. Right.
Yeah.
And so getting a bed helps that for a child, helps that and solves that issue and dilemma there. Well, and as I mentioned before, the more we shared and the more people saw what we were doing, I realized that there was not just people in my community, but there's people all across the country that found the same problem that I found, right? I think they're like, well, I'll find out if this guy's really telling me the truth. And the next thing you know, they call me up and say, I want to start a chapter in my town, because they realize how bad it is. And because of that, and because of all the exposure that we've gotten, praise the Lord that we got it. We now have trained over 440 chapters in almost every state in 4 countries. And right now, as we sit, we've built 375,000 beds.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing.
It's fun, and it's awesome, and it sucks at the same time, right? Yeah. It's terrible that we even have.
It sounds like a big number, right? But the numbers are still big. That kids don't have beds. So,
well, I learned something real. It's not hard math for me to realize that if we're going to solve child bedlessness, right, and if our mission is no kid sleeps on the floor in our town, and we want our town to be everybody's town, well, that ain't going to be solved by some farm kid from Idaho, right? That's going to be solved by farm kids in their own town, per se. And so what I wanted to do and what we've done is build a platform where people can do what we do in their own hometown. And I wanted to make it super easy for them. I didn't want them to go through the minutia of setting up a nonprofit and a company and how do I find a bank and how do I find insurance? I know how hard that is, right? Yeah. So I would rather just say, let me do that for you, right? We're going to take all that responsibility, all that work, all that cost and stuff. We're going to do that. You just focus on
Make
three
beds.
things. Yep. Raise money, build, and then deliver beds. And the way we finance it, because obviously we got to turn on the lights and we got to pay for insurance. And, we're a company still, right? This is the beauty of it. I pull 10%. That's it. 10%. So if grandma, right, and this is the way I look at it, if little grandma donates $100 to my chapter, I'm happy to say, listen, grandma, did you know 90 cents of your dollar stays in this community? And it goes directly to the beds and to the kids in this community. It's not helping someone 2 states over or 2 towns over, even 2 countries over, right? It helps the kids right here because that's what you wanted, right? And that's important. I think that's important in our world today, is being transparent with what donated dollars really are. And we value that very, very much in our organization.
So Luke, have you heard of Room Reduct?
What was that?
Rooms Reduct?
Mm-mm.
I had a Teatime guest and a former peace ambassador sister who has that in Texas. And what she does is she goes in and does a remodel of a bedroom for children who have been physically and sexually abused, because the bedroom is a sacred place, right?
Yep.
I'd love to connect you guys together, because she
great.
has like chapters all over in different countries as well. And they need beds, for some of these kids. We
love partnering up with organizations. And I think this is important for people to understand. Listen, I ask of you today, and I'll come back to that comment, but I ask everybody today, the best way you can help us out is just open your mouth. Just share what you hear today. Share this podcast. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to someone in the grocery store. I promise you, there's going to be someone walk by that either knows of a child that's in need or is looking for a way to give back. And they can do that because of your conversation that you might have with, on the sidelines, if you will, right? And I think that's really important. That's how we're going to solve this problem, right? Is by doing it together and sharing what we know and reaching those corners of the universe, if you will, that otherwise don't know what's going on, right? It's
word of mouth, right? It's just like the small community. Word of mouth. You heard what the neighbor did. The neighbor told you this and this and this and this. We just got to be that neighbor with the word of mouth and just keep spreading this and spread this Teatime out there and get it out there. And this is why I started Teatime, was to make a difference by sharing organizations and nonprofits and authors and educators who are not getting that voice and not getting that story out there. And that's what Teatime is all about, Luke, is let's open those doors. How can we open doors together? What countries are you in, Luke?
So we're in the United States, Canada, and Bermuda and Bahamas. But if I were to be honest, they're more like a chapter. We tried to get them going because of some disaster relief efforts, and we've helped a lot of kids there. They're kind of stagnant. They have been for a couple of years. But we know if we're only covering 29% of the United States, and in Canada, it's far less than that. We're growing. I think we're up to about 20 chapters in Canada now, but we're trying to reach these kids that don't know about us. And when you're only covering, 29, 30% of your country, you still have a lot of work here. Right. And we know that, we want to focus in on how we can help kids here. Oh, and I was going to tell you, if your listeners out there, if anybody knows of a child that is sleeping on the floor, please go to our website, shpbeds.org, shpbeds.org or shpbeds.ca. There you go. Click on that and you can apply for a bed for a child, whether it's for your own child, for your sister's child, the town over, or a friend that 3 states over that has kids sleeping on the floor. Based on the zip code of where the child's at, that's how we get that application to a chapter president. Now, if that zip code has not been accepted by a chapter president as a deliverable area, right, that means we need a chapter there. And the recipient will get an email back saying, hey, we don't have a chapter there yet, but we grow 50 chapters plus a year, Liz. And I'm hoping the reason why I come on these podcasts is I want to spread awareness, and I hope to find and encourage and motivate and inspire that one person that finds that, hey, there's no chapter here. And I'm going to be like all these other chapter presidents and like Luke, and I'm not putting up with this, right? I can make a difference. And we have created a platform that is easy to entry, no boundary, very little boundary to entry to make this successful. We put on 50, 60 chapters a year. We only lose one or two, and the attrition rate is high success because we take it so personally, and we have a process, and we train them, and we stick with you, and we help these chapter presidents and take all the hard stuff away from them anyways, on running a business. We just want them to focus on building and delivering beds to kids.
So to start a chapter, they just have to go to the website?
Yep. Go to the website. When you go to the website, there's a bunch of ways you can help. First of all, raise awareness, right? By going to the website, learning about child bedlessness. And what I love about our website is it's not a single website. And what I mean by that is you're not going to go, when you go to that website, shbeds.org, you're not going to go to some main company page. Based on where you're at the time, it's going to go geosync to the closest chapter that's to you, because we know that this is a local problem. So we want you to see what's happening locally. So you're going to see how many applications, how many children are in need. It's going to be right there in front of you. You're going to see how many beds that chapter is built, right? Keeping in mind that they probably don't cover near as much of the geographic area as you think. So there's a lot more work to there, right? So you might only see 50 kids in need. It's probably more like 500. They haven't learned about you yet, right? There's a way to contact that local chapter president, and you can be a part of the core team. They're always looking, and we have endless amounts of opportunities to volunteer on a core team level, and you can help build and deliver and fundraise and meet and go to meeting. I mean, it's just super fun, right? And now, if there's no chapter there, like I mentioned, you can start one in your own area. And, we have a very robust training program. We have you fill out an application, you watch a webinar. If you're still interested, then we actually connect you with what we call a chapter support lead, kind of like a district manager, if you will, on a business front. And there you jump on a Zoom call with them, and you get to ask all the questions you want. We want you to be prepared as much as possible. And after all of that, if you're still wanting to move forward, then we fly you to Salt Lake City, and we take a weekend and we teach you the ins and outs and you'll be there with 30 other people that are either training to be a chapter president or retraining or succession planning. And then when you get home, you hit the ground running. You're ready to go. In fact, we've had some chapter presidents, and this will give you a little bit of insight of a lot of people are fearful of running a chapter because they don't know how to ask for money. I don't know how to do that, Luke. I've never asked for money before in my life. And I tell them the same thing. I said, listen, I don't know how it is in other charities, but in Sleep and Emily Peace, that is the least of your concerns. That will be the easiest part of running a chapter president. And for an example, we had a chapter president come to training. She wasn't even a chapter yet. She already raised $40,000, just like that.
Wow.
Well, come on. When you talk to these organizations, first of all, a lot of these organizations are looking for team building exercises, right? Some sort of they've got a corporate social responsibility. They want to give back to the community. They just don't know how. And if you can find an activity, they usually lay some poor HR gal to find something, right? And these poor gals are just banging their head going, okay, I got to find an activity that's meaningful. It's fun. 2 people or 200 people might show up. I don't know, right? I've got to plan it all, blah, blah. It's just time consuming. It's painful. Well, we make it super easy because all we ask for is $300 per every bed that you want to donate, or that you want to build, right? So just tell me your budget. Tell me where you want to build it, because we're mobile. We'll come and build in a parking lot, right? Tell me how many volunteers you're going to be there. After that, we take care of everything. We order the wood usually from Lowe's, our national sponsor. They deliver it right to the spot. We show up with our tools, and then we teach all these volunteers how to use tools, how to use drills, how to use, sanders, and they build the beds. And the beauty about that, Liz, is every single one of those volunteers, their fingerprints on every single bed that goes through, right? And it's not easy work, and that's good. I didn't think so at first. I was worried about volunteers not liking it because it's physically demanding. Yeah. But it's actually quite the opposite. That's what people crave. They crave hard work, because when you've worked hard and you feel it in your bones, and the next day you're sore and you're blowing sawdust out of your nose for the next 2 days, right? You feel great. We have a saying in SHP, the happiest volunteer is the sweatiest and the dustiest. right?
That's what you gave me. It's in my book.
Amen. Because that is what people want. They want to feel like they made a difference. And you're not going to do that just pushing a broom around or pushing a button or wiping a table, right? You're going to feel that when you are touching the item that you know is going to help a kid, when you're physically doing something, when you're in an assembly line and you're waiting on someone and someone's waiting on you and you're doing this together. And if any part of that falls down, then it all stops, right? So you're very needed. If I can tell my Hank story real quick, I don't know how much time we've got, but you know, Hank
we can go all night. Like you
said, all right. Well, careful what you wish for. You know, so I remember this is back 2014 or so. It was my first public build. So it's the first time that I just scheduled a build. I had a sponsor, and they're like, invite anybody. And I'm like, great. You know, it was January in Idaho. I was at this crappy little warehouse. It's Saturday morning, and I'm like, you know what? I just don't think I'm going to get a lot of volunteers. No one's going to come down here in 20-degree weather and build beds for kids, right? So I put it in the newspaper. Well, I was super surprised that we had a lot of volunteers show up, which was great. But then in walked this Hank, his name. Hank was like 500 years old. I mean, this guy was he didn't have a cane, but he was walking like an old guy, you know. But Hank had that grandpa smile, you know. You just loved him the minute you saw him, and he was doing something weird. He actually brought these little cards that said "Thank you for your service" or something like that. It said "Thank you" on it, and he was handing it out to the other volunteers. And I remember thinking, oh, this guy, this is not his first rodeo volunteering, right? And I find out it wasn't. He'd done it many, many times. So he'd come up to me and he said, so you're the guy, huh? And I'm like, sure, yeah. He's like, where do you need me? And my first thought was, I don't need you to die, okay? I need you to be alive after we're done here. And I said, well, tell me, Hank, what did you do for a living? And he says, well, I was a carpenter for 40 years. I'm like, oh, okay, I know exactly where to put you. Because if there's one part of our process that you can't screw up, it's cutting wood, you know? And so I put him on the saw. And it's our most dangerous piece of equipment. So you want someone with experience there. And of course, he knew exactly what to do. I showed him the cuts that we needed, just had to show him once, and he was off and running. Well, the sad thing, when you run a chapter and when you're running a build as a chapter president, you got to understand there's 60, 70 people there that have never done this before, right? So you're constantly, this is how this is done, and you got to do this, and you're solving problems and putting out fires and helping this and doing that, answer questions and blah, blah, blah. Well, 4 hours go by, Liz. I forgot about Hank. I was so busy, right? And the minute I realized, oh my gosh, Hank, is he dead? You know, so I run back, and he's all the way at the beginning of the train, right? Because he's cutting the wood. That's where it starts. So I run back there, and here's Hank, just head to toe in sawdust, right? His clothes are as white as his hair. It was funny. And I was like, Hank, I'm so sorry, man. I forgot about you. You know, how you doing? And you know, I remember he kind of dusted his face off. You know, I think he was telling me something. And he looked up at me and he says, you know, Luke, let me tell you something. I've volunteered my time my whole life. I've done a lot of, other events. He says, never have I ever showed up to an event, and in 5 minutes I was put on an assignment and I could not leave. I was so busy. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't grab a glass of water. I was just so busy. And of course we allow people to do that, but he just felt so obligated. Right. And I said, I'm so sorry, man. I should have come back and helped you. And he stopped me. He says, Luke, stop. No. He says, thank you. And I remember that I kind of like leaned back going, what the? And that's when I learned, Hank and all those volunteers, they got the same feeling I did. The harder I worked, the more satisfying and fulfilling it was. And Hank knew, just like all those other volunteers, every cut meant a bed for a kid, and every sander and every drill and screw, it just meant more reinforcement for this bed that's going to help a kid sleep for the next 10 years. Right. And he told me later on, he said, Luke, I volunteer my time all the time. He says, I have never felt, and this is not an uncommon saying, I've never felt more fulfilled in a service opportunity than I do when I build beds for kids. Right. And I think it's just because it's not easy work. So I do a lot of nonprofit training, and I tell people, these nonprofits, I said, listen, don't make it easy. Don't make it too easy for your volunteers, because you want them to feel like they mean something. You want to feel like their efforts. This kid's not going to get his bed unless you work hard at it. And people love that. You love it, right? We all love it. And I think I made the mistake early on, and a lot of nonprofits do, is they spend too much time trying to make the process easy. And they think if I make it light, the burden light for these volunteers, then they'll come back. And, they might come back, but they only come back because they might feel obligated. They're not going to come back because they feel fulfilled.
Yeah,
and hard work
the
does
heart's
that.
not there.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. It's all about heart. When you're volunteering, it's heart. Well, and unless you're looking for a bonus or you're looking for a freebie or something like that, right? Like a free, I don't know, like.
And it's the heart. Yeah, it's the heart that gets you there, but it's the fulfilling feelings, right, that get you back, right? And they're probably combined, right? They're probably one and the same, if you will. But that's when I realized, okay, listen, there are great people out there, and they're not afraid to work. They're not afraid to put in the time and the effort, So a lot of our chapter presidents are retirees. They're old guys and gals, usually wives or best friends. And, we have a couple of delivery teams. They call them the old 84s. Their average age is 84. So these are old guys, climbing upstairs and drilling beds together and delivering these kids beds, because they know what it's like to see a child crawl into bed at 3:00 in the afternoon and go to sleep because they've never had one.
Yeah, absolutely. So Luke, how can we help you tonight?
Great. Thank you for asking. Again, the biggest ask, and the simplest one, Miss Liz, is I pray that your volunteers will, or your audience, just share what you heard tonight. Open your mouth, tell people about child bedlessness. Now that I hate to put that obligation on you, but now you have it.
Yeah.
And share it with people. Trust me, they probably won't even believe you at first. And the beauty of it is you're going to surprise them with a pandemic, an epidemic, a problem that's going on right under their nose, and they don't even know it, just like you didn't. So share it with people. And the next thing is of course, if you feel, like this pulls at your heart, you want to help, donations are great. That's not even the top 30 things I'd ask you for. The biggest thing I ask for you after raising awareness for us is find your local chapter and help. These men and women, no one gets paid at the chapter level. These are all volunteers, and we tell them they only work half days, 12 hours.
Only half days.
Just kidding.
Break your back for half a day.
Yeah, it's only half a day. What are you complaining about?
So Luke, how much does a bed cost?
So in the United States, on average, right, because we provide the mattress, which is the most expensive part of the bed, right? But mattress, sheets, pillows, and delivery, and the insurance, and all the other stuff, it's $300 for one bed. It's pretty cheap, and considering, gosh, that's the cost of a single mattress. Here's the interesting thing is we value dollars, our sacred donation dollars, so much. And this will kind of give you an idea why, if you're looking to do an in-kind donation, please do so. Of course, it all has to be brand new. We can't take anything used, but brand new. But just keep this in mind, because we build 100,000 beds a year, right? I now can go buy shipping containers of mattresses and shipping containers of material needed. So we have actually put a number and found that when we take $1 that would something that would cost you $1, we make it $1.36. So it's worth $1.36 to us because of our buying power, right? So we encourage people. We can stretch that dollar farther than they can. But again, raising money and getting money to help kids get beds is not a hard thing for us, right? The hardest thing is we just need hands. We need people to show up. We can build these beds super fast. In fact, we have a build with Lowe's, our national sponsor. We're building 11,000 beds in 24 hours.
Wow.
That is a bed. I haven't done the math on it. Last year we did about 5,100, just over 5,000. It was a bed every 12.6 seconds. That's how fast we built it. So we can build beds fast, right? It's delivering them is the big challenge, right? And you can only build or deliver a bed a single child at a time, right? And so that takes a lot of volunteers, takes a lot of hands. And so, if volunteers or listeners out there, show up with your kids, show up with your family. I have all sorts of stories about how SHP, yeah, it helped the kids in their community, but it also helped them. It helped save marriages. It helped people get out of alcoholism and drug abuse. It helped people relate and connect with their kids because it gave them something that they can do together and something that's super meaningful. I tell people, listen, true joy. If you want true joy in life, you got to stop looking at yourself and see how you can help someone else out. Now, your problems, they don't go away. Of course they don't, right? But I promise you, they're going to seem far less heavy, and which they're not. They're never that heavy, right? And it just helps you get through those problems much easier when you stop focusing on yourself and your own problems, and especially when you help a little child out. I mean, that's just where the rubber meets the road for us. These are our kids, and they're in these situations. They're suffering, not because of their choices, just because of, child bedlessness doesn't know economics. It doesn't know geography. It doesn't know race or culture or anything. It just knows heartache. It just knows trouble situations. It knows terrible, terrible things. And it doesn't care. It strikes, and it strikes hard. And the only thing we can do when it does strike is be ready to combat it as a local community member.
Luke, have you gone into the schools for the trade schools and that?
It's a great question. So one reason why we blew up is we were featured on an episode of a show called Returning the Favor, and it was hosted by Mike Rowe. And usually everybody knows Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs, right? But he is very big. He's a big celebrity in the States, and he has a charity called Mike Rowe Works, and he's a huge supporter and gives out scholarships for the trade skills. And listen, any kid out there, if you want to make a lot of money in the future, go learn a trade. Because right now, I sit in some of these meetings with our sponsors and our donors like Lowe's. 1 in every 5 trade skills companies is their employees are over 55 years old. 1 in 5 is under 55. Everybody else is over 55. Wow. So there's no young kids in these fields. So here in 10 years, if you want a plumber, yeah, good luck. Good luck finding one. And then these plumbers will be so busy, their costs will be so high. This is where you can make $1 billion out there. Learn a good trade, start an organization, start a company. In 5-10 years, you'll print your own money. I promise you.
Absolutely. And I think it's time to bring back the trades, right? We got to start getting back hands-on. Not 100%. Hands-on phones and monitors and stuff like that. Hands-on, like a drill. My spouse always says to me, God, I hate going into Home Depot with you or Home Hardware because you're always into the tools. And I'm like, what does that tool do? What does that one do?
Exactly.
And he's like, I've never seen a woman like you. He's
who doesn't love playing with power tools? It's funny. We got our warehouse, and I had a bank call me up and said, hey, some of our ladies want to come over on their lunch break and build beds. And I thought that was kind of weird. I'm like, sure, yeah, come on over. We had these ladies show. I mean, they're at work. They're at bank. I mean, some of them were in stilettos, Liz. It blew me away. But you know what? All it took is 10 minutes of showing them how to do it. And those ladies went nuts. They built like 22 headboards faster than I thought. I mean, I went into my office for 10 minutes, met with a guy, came out, and I'm like, whoa, slow down. You're running out of wood. So, no experience is necessary. And that's important. We want these experiences to happen for everybody, and bring your kids. I have a photo of a 4-year-old sanding a board with a 104-year-old guy. Same board, same picture. I mean, it was a good photo op, but there was I wanted to use it as an example of this is for everybody, and everybody can help, because it's just as important for that little 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old scout, whoever, or grandpa, to feel the feelings of helping out and serving others, because that's where true joy happens. And you know what? That's what's going to change the culture in our communities in our countries. That's what's going to help division, create equality. It's going to create connectiveness and bonding, and really where humanity needs to be. That's why my mantra is humans helping humans. That's all that we are. We're not affiliated or associated or connected to any political party, religious party. We don't care about that stuff. Because
we just want a bed for a kid.
It's a bed. We're a human helping a human, or we're humans helping humans, and these are little humans, right? That's all they are. They're little humans like us. They're going to be just like us growing up, human beings. We need to help them. That's our job in this world, is to help each other out, and there's no better way to do that than through service. So,
absolutely. So, what final message do you have for us tonight, Luke?
Man, we went over a lot of stuff, Liz. I just want to thank you for, number one. We got a little rocky start, but I'm so glad we connected, because I want everybody to hear this, because I promise you, this message is not just for the kids in your community. This message is for you. It's for you listening, because there are things I know in your life, like every other human being on the planet, right? That you want to feel the good feelings. You want to feel like you made a difference. I don't care who you are. You want, when you die, to be remembered as, hey, this person made a difference in, and maybe it's only in their lives or one person's life, and that's okay. And this is a way that you can make a difference in the lives of thousands of kids in your own community. All you need to do, I know this is hard, and well, it's not hard. I don't know, for whatever reason, it seems hard. All you need to do is act. All you need to do is get off the couch and walk to the garage and take it step by step. The next thing you know is you built 370,000 beds for kids. And, Liz, I don't even like to think of it. If I hadn't got off the couch, where were those 300,000 kids? Where were those 650,000 volunteers that have been a part of us over the last 10 years? What experience would they have now? I just don't even want to think about it. And that all comes from just a single moment. And this is from just a dumb farm kid from Idaho, guys. I'm not a Harvard grad. I'm not a war hero. I'm a small town kid. And if that doesn't tell you that anybody can do it, then I don't know what does, because you can make a difference.
I like that, because you just put out the message that anybody can make a difference. It doesn't matter about status or quota or anything like that. You just get up, move. Just move.
Just like a chapter president told me something. He says, Luke, I heard your message, and I knew all I needed to do was something. Doing nothing is not good. Just do something. And you know what? If it's not beds for kids, go find something that you're passionate about. That's what we want. Because if everybody built beds for kids, then everything else would be in jeopardy, right? So Go find something you're passionate about, and don't be afraid to dive in. Don't be afraid to jump in, and all hands on deck. Go to town. And there are things that'll change inside of you subtly sometimes not, but more subtle than you realize. And you'll look back 5 years from now going, wow. I mean, I can see emotionally, sometimes even physically, but emotionally, mentally, how far I've come. And it's only positive stuff. It's only great stuff.
Absolutely. And that's what it is. Just get up and move. And who cares if people mock you and laugh at you? Just do it. I'm known as a crazy lady that serves tea, that doesn't even serve tea. I serve real life tea. I don't serve a beverage, right? But everybody's like, where's the tea, Miss Liz? I don't have tea. Right now I have Gatorade in my cup.
Yeah, that's right.
But just go out and do it. And that's what I really admire about all of my guests out there. If I wouldn't have started a podcast, I wouldn't have over 500 interviews with 500 different incredible people from around the world.
Wow.
I just got up and I did it. I could have been watching soap operas for the last 7 years, but you know what? I got up and I did this, and I met you, Luke, and I met incredible people along the way. So for all my listeners out there, just get up and move. Just move it. Just try. And word of mouth goes a long way. Just spread the word. Spread this tea time. Get it out there. Share it with your community. Share it with your family. Share it with anybody that it'll resonate with. And if you know somebody that's missing a bed, let Miss Liz know so I can get that out there. If there's not a chapter in Cornwall, let's get one in Cornwall. You know, I have a lot of Cornwall businesses that listen to Tea Time. You guys are listening to Miss Liz. If there's not one here, let's see what we can do and open a chapter here in Cornwall, because we have that here as well. You know, thanks for sharing Haley's story. You know, hearing those stories is what we need to hear, because those hard stories are what opens doors like yours, Luke. So thank you so much for that. I'm just going to give a wrap up of what we did tonight on Tea Time, and we're going to wrap it up. But if you guys want to know more about Luke, check him out. Check out the website. Luke, if you just want to shout out the website one more time, spell it out for all the audio listeners out there.
You bet. It's shpbeds.org. And if you want to contact me, I'm on all the socials. Just look up SHP Luke or Luke Mickelson. You'll find me. You know, I share content every day. I want people to see and hear the effects of child bedlessness, the story, how they can get involved, you know, hear testimonials of these chapter presidents, see pictures, you know, whatever I can do to paint that picture of what child bedlessness looks like, as well as how we can solve this together. So,
well, thank you so much. Luke, thank you. What you've shown us is that service doesn't require perfection. It requires participation. A bed may seem simple, but to a child, it represents dignity, security, and worth. To everyone listening today, I invite you to reflect. What tiny moment have you been overlooking in your own community? Where are you waiting instead of acting? What could change if you decided to serve right where you are? Luke's journey reminds us that legacy isn't built in grand speeches. It's built in garages and small towns, and in hands willing to help. And here at Tea Time, we believe in exactly that. Humans helping humans, one conversation, one act, and one life at a time. Until next time, look around you. Someone may be waiting for your tiny moment to change their world. And I'll see everybody on Thursday with 2 new Tea Times, and we're going to do this all over again. So thank you guys all.